afternoon. My name is Eric Barron, and I serve as the United States Attorney for the District of Maryland. We are here across the street from Tench Tillman Elementary and Middle School in East Baltimore. I'm honored to be here with some of our partners, including Governor Larry Hogan, Maryland Attorney General Brian Frosh, Mayor Brandon Scott, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives Special Agent in Charge Tony Crosby, Drug Enforcement Administration Special Agent in Charge Jared Forjay, Federal Bureau of Investigations Assistant Special Agent in Charge Rob Turner, Homeland Security Investigations Special Agent in Charge James Harris, Maryland Secretary Rob Green of the Maryland Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, Maryland State Police Colonel Woodrow Jones, Baltimore City Police Commissioner Michael Harrison, and representatives from our federal congressional delegation. Just like my family and I are expecting my daughter's safe return to school, so too are the families of students in this community and every community throughout Maryland. It is our job to promote safe communities. Public safety is a basic right and shouldn't be too much to ask for. But violence has been at extraordinary rates for far too long, and exceptional times require exceptional actions. A few months ago, the General Assembly approved Governor Larry Hogan's exceptional crime funding package. Today, I am proud to announce that with the collaboration of Attorney General Frosh and help from all of our federal, state, and local partners, I am using that unprecedented level of state law enforcement funding to devote more federal resources towards fighting violent crime than ever before. Moreover, unlike any other time in the history of my office, we are going after violent offenders in new ways and by any legal means necessary. This unprecedented level of state funding demonstrates that our federal, state, and local law enforcement partnership is stronger than ever. With this money, I am taking at least 3 actions never done by this office before. First, I have established a new violent and organized crime section, which I am expanding by 30 new state-funded positions, including prosecutors, investigators, and analysts. My goal is to have all or most of these personnel hired by October, the end of my first year in office. Second, I have directed my staff to investigate and prosecute repeat violent offenders for any and all wrongdoing that meets our priorities, especially fraud. This Al Capone model of prosecution is designed to take violent people off the streets by any appropriate legal means necessary. Finally, I have directed my staff to actively review firearms cases for violations of the federal school zone statute. School grounds should be safe, sacred, and free of fear. The mayor and Commissioner Harrison have tasked the city's Firearms Intelligence Unit to work with my office and the ATF as we look for these violations. Again, never before has the U.S. Attorney's Office devoted more federal resources and professional personnel towards fighting violent crime in Maryland, and they will do so by any legal means necessary. You'll hear from a few people about how our partnership has never been stronger, starting with Governor Larry Hogan and ending with our most valuable player, Baltimore City Police Commissioner Michael Harrison. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you, U.S. Attorney Barron, for your leadership and for continuing the long-standing partnership that we have had with the Federal Prosecutor's Office. And I want to commend you for really building on all of those crime-fighting efforts with this incredible new initiative here today. For 8 years, our administration has been fighting to give law enforcement officers, prosecutors, and judges the tools that they need to fight violent crime and to hold violent criminals accountable. And a critical piece of that has been active collaboration and coordination with all levels of government. And we brought together federal, state, and local partners to conduct coordinated aggressive surge operations throughout Baltimore City, which resulted in the arrest of hundreds of repeat violent felons. We launched an expansion of Project Exile to enable federal prosecutors to charge repeat violent offenders with federal crimes in federal courts before federal judges. And last fall, I directed the Maryland State Police and all 5 of our state police agencies to immediately provide additional investigative assistance to help back up the Baltimore Police Department and to provide enhanced visibility patrols and an all-hands-on-deck effort. We launched a 100% state match of all Crime Stoppers rewards that lead to arrests. And as U.S. Attorney Barron mentioned, we enacted a $500 million Refund the Police initiative, which includes a 50% increase in state aid to local police to help them recruit and retain quality officers, to increase diversity, to expand community policing efforts, and improve training. And we recently invested another $45 million in state funding for Baltimore City crime fighting, and $3.5 million, as the U.S. Attorney mentioned, to help fund more than 30 new positions in the U.S. Attorney's office, including 10 additional special assistant U.S. attorneys for Baltimore City. We added another $35 million to fully fund all victim services providers all across the state, and another $6.5 million to help the Baltimore Police Department beef up its warrant apprehension task force. The MSP is providing ongoing investigative support to the BPD. We've increased high visibility patrols with all 5 of our state police agencies, and the Maryland State Police are also now patrolling I-83 to free up more city officers to focus on violent crime. We formed a new Maryland Criminal Intelligence Network, which is an innovative data and information sharing system that emphasizes collaboration by connecting state-funded operational initiatives from counties and municipalities with state and federal law enforcement agencies. To date, the Maryland Criminal Intelligence Network has contributed to disrupting or dismantling more than 1,800 criminal organizations in Maryland, seizing more than $30 million in cash from criminal network activity, removing 2,000 pounds of illegal drugs from our streets, and referring more than 13,400 individuals to substance use disorder treatment. And last week, we announced the creation of a new MSIN Lower Shore Coalition, and another major bust funded by this effort was just announced yesterday here in Baltimore City. I want to sincerely thank all of the state, federal, and local partners for being a part of all of these important efforts. And by working together, we will continue to use every tool at our disposal to help make our neighborhoods safer. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to our Maryland Attorney General, Brian Frosh.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you, U.S. Attorney Barron, Mayor Scott, and all the other dignitaries here. We appreciate very much U.S. Attorney's new initiative, and it may not have escaped your attention that Governor Hogan and I don't agree on everything, but we are in vehement agreement on the need to address violent crime and holding those who perpetrate it accountable. And when I was first sworn in, we set up the first organized crime unit in the Attorney General's office. And over the past 7+ years, we have addressed organized crime, gang violence across the state, and to a large extent in Baltimore City. We have indicted and put behind bars more than 400 of the most dangerous people in our state. We have established, I think, great relationships with the folks in this line, all of the federal agencies and the state agencies. And in particular, we've worked with the FBI, and we worked with the Baltimore City Police Department on a gang investigation that resulted in the conviction of the murderers of Sebastian Dvorak, a young man who was celebrating his 27th birthday, who was murdered on his way home. We were able to identify and put behind bars those murderers. We've worked with the ATF to bring charges against repeat carjacking gangs, with the FBI as well on carjacking, one in particular that led to the solving of more than a dozen carjackings by some very violent individuals. We work with our Maryland State Police partners on a daily basis to prosecute folks who are trying to obtain or have obtained firearms when they're legally prohibited from doing so. We work with the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services to bring corruption cases and gang cases on folks who are working and otherwise detained in our correction system. We have worked with the United States Attorney's Office, with the DEA, with the HSI, and with the FBI and our other partners on strike force cases, as well as multi-jurisdictional conspiracy cases to get Maryland's worst offenders off the streets and to protect community members who are victimized by their horrendous acts. For the past number of years, we've worked closely with the Governor's Office on Crime Prevention to obtain grant money to fund special assistance in the U.S. Attorney's Office, and we're grateful that Governor Hogan has increased that money this year. It means not only additional special assistant U.S. attorneys working out of the U.S. Attorney's Office itself, but also several more in our office who can help us with the many, many cases that our organized crime unit has been investigating and intends to bring. We're in the process of interviewing and onboarding those folks right now. I do have to emphasize that we're not going to prosecute or incarcerate our way out of the violent crime problem that afflicts Baltimore City and the rest of our state. Nobody knows that better than our mayor, Brandon Scott, who is working hard to get to the roots of crime and stop it before it occurs, bring peace to our neighborhoods, as well as being tough on the folks that we find who are interrupting that peace and putting in danger the rest of the folks in our city and in our state. So I give you the Mayor of Baltimore, Brandon Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General, and thank you, U.S. Attorney Barron, for the invitation. And Mr. Governor, thank you for joining us again. And I think it's already been said, but with all of these federal, state, and local partners, you see how even when we all don't agree on a lot, we all agree on one thing, is that extreme levels of coordination and partnership is the only way that we're going to solve the issue of violent crime. And when you see the way that we're working together, you see that every individual you see here takes that very seriously. And I am here today on behalf of the great residents of Baltimore to thank all of our partners in government and law enforcement who continually support the mission to make Baltimore and Maryland a safer place for all. It is utterly impossible for a city to thrive when residents do not feel safe in their neighborhoods. That's why tackling violent crime is and will be my biggest challenge and my top priority. However, we know that the Baltimore Police Department cannot solve crime alone. There are no shortcuts to reducing violence in Baltimore, and there are no shortcuts to working together with each other and our residents that we serve. And at a time when teamwork and coordination are needed more than ever, we are proud to have the deep partnerships with our counterparts in the U.S. Attorney's Office, with our state and federal law enforcement agencies. Building and strengthening these key partnerships is a central component of how we want to implement my comprehensive violence prevention plan. Partnerships like our collaborations with the U.S. Marshals, the Maryland State Police, and other federal law enforcement agencies during Operation Washout and Operation North Star, where we managed to serve hundreds of outstanding warrants for crimes and arrest over 200 violent criminals. This is also why when in our first meeting, Mr. Governor, I talked to the governor about restarting the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council to create a platform to ensure that we're all on the same page and are intentional and unified in our work to make Baltimore a safer place. And I say it consistently publicly, but I want to thank the governor for bringing his fine folks from the state back to the table. And we're going to have been doing some great work together. And Mr. Governor, we're going to still keep pushing to get those other folks to come back to the table to join us each and every month. Without this collaboration, we would not have been able to successfully implement our group violence reduction strategy in the Western District, which of course is led by Director Jackson in the Office of Neighborhood Safety Engagement. GVRS gives individuals a choice: step away from the life or face the consequences of all the weight of law enforcement. It is a all hands on decks approach where we are extremely proud of the partnership and cooperation that we've seen thus far and look forward to expanding it. Together, we are participating in weekly shooting reviews to share information and identify the people who the strategy will focus on, offering necessary support so that individuals have the opportunity to change their life, but also letting folks know that we will bring down the hammer if they do not. Just yesterday, as you all know, we announced the arrest of 12 members of the Princess Plaza social network as a part of a 2-month-long investigation, which was targeted enforcement initiative of GVRS. This was the third group of arrests associated with GVRS this year, and to date, 87 grouped involved individuals have been arrested in the Western District and in part of those groups. Yesterday's announcement, based on local investigation and coordination between the partner agencies, is the fulfillment of a promise that those who chose to engage in violent behavior will be held accountable swiftly. And so far, just to remind everyone that we've conducted 54 custom notification referrals and delivered 43 custom notifications. Thanks to these efforts, we are seeing that violence in the Western District, historically the most violent of Baltimore's non-police district, is down significantly when compared to a chronically violent district where GVRS has not yet been implemented. Non-fatal shootings in the Western District are down 24%, and the Western District is down 31%. By comparison, that is not the case in other portions. And we are determined to continue that success as we look to expand this strategy responsibly to other areas in the city. This new level of coordination between our federal, state, and local partners sends a clear message that we are united in our mission to reduce violent crime and get individuals involved in that violence off our streets. You heard the U.S. Attorney General talk about U.S. Attorney, talk about this coordination with our Firearms Intelligence Unit, a unit that I started my first month here solely to make sure that we have a unit that is focused on making these gun cases and giving them to our federal partners to make sure that people who are using guns in school zones, who are trafficking weapons, are held accountable. And we are so grateful to that partnership. We are so grateful to all of our people here today who work with our police department each and every day. And there's an agency that we all know has worked with dealing with firearms continuously, that works with us all the time, that is here in Baltimore, that has such a deep presence even when people don't see it, and is now my honor and privilege to turn the mic over to ATF Special Agent in Charge, Tony Crosby.
Thank you, Mayor Scott. I'm Tony Crosby, the Special Agent in charge of the ATF Baltimore Field Division. We're proud to work with each of the agencies you see here today in our collective efforts to reduce violence. The core of ATF's mission in Baltimore is to identify, investigate, and apprehend trigger pullers and firearms traffickers by using the crime gun intelligence model. Firearms tracing, ballistic forensics from crime guns, and partnerships are the cornerstones that this leads to the intelligence-led approach. It allows for information sharing across jurisdictions at every level of law enforcement. Through this, ATF special agents and Baltimore Police Task Force officers have taken on some of the most prolific violent groups in the city, including the 39 Babies and Triple C gangs. The street crews that push drugs and commit shootings nearly every day are routinely the target of ATF investigations. We see policemen shot, coaches, college students, and even children murdered. The criminals who do this are without conscience, and we are relentless in our pursuit of them. We have a dedicated crime gun enforcement team made up of agents, Baltimore Police Task Force officers, and analysts who investigate homicides, shootings with actionable crime gun intelligence. Since 2019, partnered agents and task force officers and our other federal partners on this team have closed 50 homicide cases and 22 non-fatal shooting cases. With every closed case, we hope that the families of the victims feel some sense of justice. By working collaboratively with our law enforcement partners and with the community, we will continue to do everything in our power to take the most violent offenders off Baltimore streets. Now I'd like to introduce the Drug Enforcement Administration's Special Agent in Charge, Jared Forjay.
Thank you. Violent crime is a major problem in our neighborhoods across Baltimore. To address this, the DEA, here with our Baltimore Strike Force partners, work tirelessly every day to reduce drug-related violent crime in our communities. At the beginning of this year, at DEA, we rolled out Operation Overdrive, a new multifaceted proactive program to reduce violent crime and its causes in and around Baltimore. Gun violence, driven mostly by drug trafficking and area gangs, as well as overdose deaths caused by deadly drugs like fentanyl, have been our main problems across Maryland. The plans and additional resources we're discussing here today outline how we are taking these problems to an entirely new level of effectiveness in Baltimore. I'm excited to see the work we're doing with our valued community members and our partners here today. Working proactively to address these issues and make a much bigger difference in our ability to ensure our communities are safe is our top priority. So with that, I'd like to turn the podium over to James Harris, Special Agent in Charge of Homeland Security Investigations.
Thank you. So I'm proud to stand here today alongside of Governor Hogan, Maryland Attorney General Frosh, Mayor Scott, United States Attorney Barron, Baltimore Police Commissioner Harrison, and several federal, state, and local law enforcement partners. We stand here today in this community park, united and committed to do our part in stopping the violence in Baltimore. We stand united in the sense that we have our individual priorities, authorities, resources, and jurisdictions. However, when we unite, those individualities do not exist. We become more resourceful, more proactive, and more effective in making Baltimore a safer place for the citizens that we all sworn to protect. Homeland Security Investigations collaborates with our federal, state, and local partners to ensure the safety and well-being of our community and address the threats posed by the opioid crisis, drug trafficking organizations, and violent gangs operating in Maryland. We are at the forefront of the U.S. government's efforts to identify, infiltrate, disrupt, and dismantle criminal gangs while denying them access to illicit funds used to fuel their violence and victimization of law-abiding citizens. We stand committed to these issues because if we are not committed, violent crime will continue to rise. Commitment is mandatory. Commitment by all law enforcement and by members of the Baltimore community as well. This needs to be and must be an all-hands-on-deck situation. The citizens of Baltimore demand it, out-of-town visitors rely on it, and children that play in parks like this one here today deserve it. This community belongs to all of us. We would be naive to think that we have all the answers to the many factors that play a part in individuals committing senseless acts of violence. However, we have some amazing tools at our disposal, and we have developed some strong partnerships. If we could continue to engage in initiatives that decrease the number of gangs and violent criminals on our streets, initiatives that disrupt the selling of deadly drugs, and initiatives that diminish the possession and trafficking of illegal weapons, we will see a significant downward trajectory in the number of violent incidences. This is something that we all want and something that we all deserve, and it is something that we know we can eventually achieve. Thank you, and I would like to turn it over to Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Rob Turner with Federal Bureau of Investigations.
Good afternoon. I'm Assistant Special Agent in charge of the Baltimore Field Office, Robert Turner. I'd first like to thank the Governor's Office and our partners for inviting us here today. We all recognize the need to fight violent crime and the limited resources to accomplish that mission. This opportunity to discuss collaboration with our law enforcement partners comes at an appropriate time as we recently finished our first ever Violent Crime Community Outreach Initiative. The FBI went back to the basics, and the entire division, the professional staff, our task force officers, our agents, went out on the streets and met with the citizens that we serve. We found this to be a successful and effective way for the innocent citizens and businesses to meet the FBI and our task force officers in the neighborhoods contributing to the safety and well-being of Baltimore. We cannot expect to make a difference in the lives of our citizens if we do not work together. One way as law enforcement that we all work together is through our funded task forces, which are key to making an impact and difference in the violent crime fight. We have had successful task forces for over decades. We need to get back to the basics. We need to continue to fight together the violent crime in our area. And with these new resources brought on, we are bringing members into these task forces from the new resources. And we are very excited about this new endeavor this year. I'm appreciative for the opportunity to speak on this important issue and look forward to upholding the promise we made to the communities we serve, fighting violent crime together. I now have the pleasure of introducing our esteemed partner, the Baltimore Police Commissioner, Michael Harrison.
Good afternoon, everyone. And I want to say a special thank you to U.S. Attorney Barron for inviting us and assembling us here today. Thank you to our governor and to our mayor, to our attorney general, and to all the leadership of all the local, state, and federal law enforcement assembled here today. When I first came to Baltimore, strengthening our local, state, and federal partnerships was a priority, as it remains today. We are grateful for the ongoing coordination and collaboration that serves as a force multiplier to maximize resources and to attack violent crime. Programs such as Project Safe Neighborhoods strengthen our overall crime fight and help to keep our children and our families and our neighborhoods safe. We stand here today as an example of what can be accomplished when multiple agencies come together and merge resources in the support of one goal. When we combine our immeasurable experience, our knowledge, and insights, we become a stronger, more cohesive, more informed law enforcement unit. Gun violence is a tragic reality in Baltimore City, and we must continue to use all of the tools available to stem the flow of these illegal guns and keep not just illegal guns, but all guns out of the hands of our young people, and then show them pathways away from violence. As students prepare to return to the classroom, it is paramount that our local schools are a safe place for the success of our communities. Violence near and in schools is absolutely unconscionable, and this new initiative illustrates exactly how serious we are about that. So I applaud the hard work, relentless work involved in these joint operations, and recognize the ongoing efforts in enhancing our enforcement and prevention strategies. The men and women of the Baltimore Police Department are fully committed to the success of Project Safe Neighborhoods, as well as our other ongoing collaborations with each of our partners here this afternoon. By continuing to work with federal, state, and local partners, BPD can show the community and the nation what teamwork looks like in preventing crime, solving crime, making arrests, protecting Baltimore's children, and creating a safer Baltimore to live, work, and visit for all. So on behalf of all the men and women of the BPD, we want to say thank you to everyone here for all of our partners who do this important work. Because we are one team, we speak with one voice, we are in one fight for the soul of one city. Thank you.
I think we may have time for a few questions, if you have questions for any of us. You see any questions? All right.
Is this on?
Oh, I shouldn't.
I appreciate the discussion of all the things that are ongoing, the many initiatives. Can we hear a little bit more, though, about the things that are being announced today in terms of the Al Capone thing, the schools thing? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So I can't emphasize enough how significant the state and the governor's investment in our office is. I mean, by multiples, the state funding for our office is far and away more than there ever has been. So that alone is hugely significant, not just for our office, but for the city and the state of Maryland. The more federal funds that are put into fighting crime, every study will tell you crime will reduce. So at first it starts there, but then what are we doing with the money? I have reorganized our office into to have a violent and organized crime section, which is, probably about 2 to 3 times larger than any section in our office now. And we're staffing it up. That section includes an intelligence unit. That intelligence unit acts as a hub for all of our law enforcement partners to collect, analyze, and solve homicides and violent crimes. That unit, with this state funding, is going from 2 people to 7 people, including 5 analysts. So we're going to be in a better position to enforce violent crime when and wherever it happens in Baltimore City or throughout Maryland. So that it starts there with that significant funding and what we plan to do with it. Now, all too often, we look at our violent crime targets in a vacuum. We're not going to do that anymore. If we suspect you for committing violent crime in our communities, you will be vetted for any and all wrongdoing that meets our office's priorities, including pandemic fraud, for example, unemployment insurance fraud, CARES Act fraud, PPP loan fraud. You might not believe it, but what we have found is that more than half of our targets are involved in such fraud. We're not going to ignore that or any other wrongdoing that meets our priorities in our office. We're no longer looking at violent crime within a vacuum. You will be vetted for any and all wrongdoing and prosecuted if we suspect you of violent crime, particularly if you are a repeat violent offender. School zones. There's a federal school zone statute. I'm looking at my first assistant. I think you'll find it at 18 U.S.C. 922Q. If you are within 1,000 feet of a school zone and you are in possession of a firearm, you can be prosecuted federally regardless of whether or not you are a felon. That's significant. That statute carries up to 5 years. So long as you have notice, and it's very fact specific, but we will take appropriate cases, including for non-felons who are possessing illegal firearms within the school zone. It's a little known or prosecuted statute, particularly in the history of the U.S. Attorney's Office. We're actively looking to prosecute that school zone statute. So those are the 3 main highlights for this press conference that we wanted to point out to you how we're using significant taxpayer dollars.
Hi, my name is Brittany Verner, Channel 2. I have 2 questions primarily for Governor Hogan. The first question, why has the coordination that is so critical been difficult to achieve, and is there any guarantee for the residents of Baltimore that it will continue?
I don't think it has been a problem. I think we've all been working together for many years, and we're taking additional steps thanks to the leadership of the U.S. Attorney and the rest of the folks that are up here, and absolutely it should continue. It needs to continue.
And the second question is a follow-up question to the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. Have the judges joined those meetings yet? And if not, will you require them to participate and increase the coordination and to improve the system?
No, Brittany, that's actually a question for me, and this is something that the governor and I agree on. They haven't. We want them to. He and I both believe that. We can't force them to. We're going to continue to ask. They should be at the table with us. The governor has been there. All of the state folks have been there. They have been wonderful. The staff have been there. Our federal partners are there. The state's attorney's office is there. Obviously, my office and the police commissioner are there. We want everybody back at the table, and we're going to keep trying to get the judges back at the table so that everybody can be a part of coordinating. And we know they're in a particular position about what what they can and can't say publicly, but we need everyone at the table so that we're able to handle these systemic issues that we have across our justice system to make sure that we are coordinated in the best way in the interest of public safety.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Kate Amara. I work at WBAL TV, and you piqued my interest when you said Al Capone model of prosecution. Can you elaborate on that? Do you have an idea of how many of these so-called repeat violent offenders that you could prosecute under the federal statute or other federal statutes using the Al Capone model?
Sure, it's really just a good way to kind of highlight the issue that if somebody is doing wrongdoing, particularly violent crime, I don't think Joe Public cares how we get a violent criminal off our streets. They just want them off. And certainly, if someone is doing other wrongdoing that is a top priority of this office, as pandemic fraud is, then we can and should investigate them for that. Sometimes we may be able to use that information for on the violent crime investigative side. But either way, it's a top priority of the office, and we intend to prosecute them for it. It's going to be impossible to quantify how many people that will end up being, but I can tell you, the pandemic fraud is so broad and wide-reaching nationally and internationally that many of our violent crime targets, including individuals and organizations, have been involved in pandemic fraud.
You kept saying the phrase significant investment. How much money is the state giving the U.S. Attorney's Office for this?
So it was, $3.5 million. I don't recall the number historically, but I can tell you last year we had 8 state-funded SAUSAs, Special Assistant U.S. Attorneys. With this funding, we not just have 14 additional SAUSAs, 14 on top of the 8 from last year. We also have 10 criminal investigators, 5 new intelligence analysts, and 4 legal personnel. So those numbers alone, the personnel numbers alone, will tell you how much, over and above this office has ever received from the state, going from 8 to really what amounts to a whole new section or unit within the U.S. Attorney's Office.
We're hearing reports of a shooting, 3 people walking into a hospital right now on the scanner. Mayor Scott, we've heard you talk about how various efforts and collaborations are working to drive down the violent crime, but on all accounts, violent crime remains up and continues to go up year over year. So why should the people of Baltimore look at this and see you and trust you to say that this really will make a difference?
Yeah, because what you would say is that, one, Mackenzie, what I'll say is this. Our police department has taken 1,600 weapons off the street this year. That's more of any year in that time in recent memory. That's more than in 2014 when we had 500, 600 more police officers. The work is being done each and every day. And what you're also seeing is things that you didn't see before. The mayor of Baltimore working with the governor, working with the U.S. Attorney, all of our federal partners in a deeper way to say that we know that this problem has existed in Baltimore City longer than Brandon Scott's been alive, and for sure longer than Mackenzie Frost has been in Baltimore, and that we have to handle it in a deeper way, that everyone has to be united, that we have to make sure that when we do make those arrests, in which we do consistently, that those individuals don't just walk back out the door. Because what you heard today and what I think people should take away from this press conference is that Fighting crime in Baltimore City is bigger than the Baltimore City Police Department. Everybody has to be lockstep, united on how we're going to do that, how we're going to have that impact. And when you have the weight of our federal partners, our state partners, and our local partners working together in ways that they haven't before, with investment to the state into our local U.S. Attorney's Office that you haven't had before, you will start to see that people see things in a different way. Because we know, if you know anything about the street, people fear the weight of federal government and federal law enforcement. And we're going to work with them to make sure that that continues to happen. And I'm also, as a man, going to continue to be out there on the street myself with We Are Us and every other organization that's working to reduce violence in Baltimore.
One more? Yeah. We're done? Oh. All right. Thanks, everyone.